I'd like to introduce the topic of leadership to you. And the way I would like to do it is to compare it with the work motivation paradigm that typically my class covers. So work motivation, if you look at those topics, there is very little debate about it, frankly. Goals work if they're done right. Reinforcement works if it's done right. So if you sort of deny that and say, I don't believe that, the whole thing is on you. Those things work. If you're a manager, you really should go out there and do that. Leadership topic is slightly different in several aspects. One, it's a higher level of analysis. It's a little more, it's not as specific as work motivation is. A lot of people kind of know it in abstract what they mean by that, but they're not sure when they're defining it. The joke in the literature is you ask 20 people about a definition of leadership and you'll get 21 different definitions. So that's one aspect to it. Then we have the leadership versus managers. Are they the same? Are they different? What do they do? So let me try to give you the state of the art of the field, and then we'll go into the specifics in terms of Fiedler's contingency model and in terms of transactional and transformational leadership. Some of the words or buzzwords or phrases that you will hear in this field is, there are many good managers, but few leaders. Why is that? Organizations are overmanaged and underled. How come? Then we have the problems of the definitions of leadership. To me, very simply, it's accomplishing extraordinary results with ordinary people. So if you just say, listen, I have all the thoroughbreds and they're factually better, well, they should win, right? But it's more of a, here's what we have, here's the workforce. How do we go above and beyond in terms of extraordinary results due to effective leadership? Then we have the dilemmas. Is this learned? Is this natural? Are you born with this? Is it anything in between? You get a little bit of a genetics, a little bit of a development. The other interesting one is the fit. Whether you're going to be an effective leader or not depends on the fit between what you bring to the table and the characteristics of the environment. Then you have a good old Napoleon, right? Rabbits and lions. Basically, would you rather have an army of rabbits led by a lion or army of lions led by a rabbit? In the former one, that would mean it doesn't really matter who your workforce is. If you have a strong leader, that person will take care of things. The other one is saying, well, if your people are or lions trained and developed to be, they'll know what to do. Leadership is less important. When you portray this sort of metaphorically to people, they all agree that there are certain differences. Like, have you ever heard anyone say, let's manage soldiers in the battle? Probably not, right? It's always let's lead soldiers in the battle. So I'll focus this one on trying to differentiate a little bit managers versus leaders. So first, let's make a little fun of the field here. So of course, everything is about leadership these days. You open a Harvard Business Review, you open the books, it's leadership that, it's leadership this, it's all over the place. So what you see here is just literally some cover pages. You have blue ocean leadership, right? Okay. How to become a great leader. Then you have a focus leader. See a kitty cat over there, so you gotta be focused. Leadership in the age of transparency. Okay, then there's military, that's legit. Then there's 3D leadership. How do you manage in 3D space? It's basically all over the place. This word has been used and misused way too much because it's normatively valued, like being attached, having been attached to the label of you're a leader, you're a good leader. Most people kind of like that. So let me give you a little bit of differences. What do managers do? What do leaders do? Management obviously developed mostly, I don't want to go too back into the history, but mostly since the Industrial Revolution, at least in the business world. Although some would say, well, how do you think Egyptians built the pyramids? That involved management. But anyway, let's just state Industrial Revolution onwards. So take a look at that photo on the top. There's a building, and it's a new building just built. And how do we do that? Well, there's a blueprint, there are specs, you better follow the specs, and everything better be according to the code, right? So a lot of what managers do is, let's just say for now, motivating effort to a certain specifications. but you're pretty sure at the end what the final product is. Here's the building done by specs. Now, let's talk about what leaders do. Now, take a look at that photo below that. So you have a U.S. soldier. He's somewhere in a foreign land. He has a serious gun in his lap. They sit down, they're chatting. Now what do you do? A lot of us would say, well, there is probably success somewhere there. This situation can result in a success. But if I ask you, what is that? We're not quite sure, right? How does success look like? Where is the spec or a blueprint for this particular situation? So typically we would say that skills that are needed for managers to succeed are not necessarily the same skills for what leaders need to succeed. Managers a little more focused on a crystallized knowledge, sort of narrow and deep, and you might say that the leaders are focused a little more on what we would call fluid knowledge or fluid intelligence, try to figure out what to do when at what time. Before we go further into this, a lot of people would say, they would ask questions about leadership, sort of, can you be a leader, can you be called a leader if you don't have voluntary followers? So like nobody is following you because they want to, they have a choice. They were just assigned to you as because you're a manager, organizations have structures, and you got to be in charge of these 10 people. Are you a leader? I don't know, you're not to me. To me, you're only a leader if you have voluntary followers, if there are people who actually have chosen and had choice to follow you, but they didn't have to. That also means just because you're a CEO doesn't mean you're a leader. You could be a strategic manager, you could be a great person, doesn't mean you're a leader, at least if you ask me on that. So let's focus a little more on what managers and leaders do. Now, here's a pretty provocative tweet. Susie Welch, Jack Welch's wife, she puts out and says, a manager is just a B- leader. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that because the functioning, the effective and efficient functioning of the world depends on managers. Trust me, everything we're going to do today is probably due to managers. We go to grocery stores and everything is in there. Planes are going on time. The society is functioning. That's managers. Basically, how would you define that? Well, they transact behavior toward some specification by compelling action. Typically, that's that closing the negative feedback loop, the negative reinforcement. So they enforce compliance and due diligence with, yes, frankly, contingent measures. You better be here, that's the spec, or else. So you can say they get what they expect and inspect. So if you look at on the right, those are all summaries of managers do. If you're doing that, you're probably a manager. And there is no problem with that. Most people are managers. At least 2/3 of all supervisors, quote unquote, are managers. So where does leadership come in? So some would say, listen, people, you can enforce their effort, but people also have gifts that are not necessarily going to give them to you. What are the gifts? Well, passion for work, creativity, self-initiative, intrinsic motivation. They're gifts. You sort of have to earn them in order to get them from people, right? So yeah, enforcing effort is one thing, and every time people go to work, they decide whether they're going to give you those gifts that actually propel most of us to go above and beyond in terms of motivation. And whether you're going to get them or not depends on, quote unquote, your leadership skills. So when you frame it in these general terms, most people would say, you know what? There is something to this framing that the skill sets are not different. They're both needed, absolutely. The world cannot function without managers. But if you just use positive and negative reinforcement, you're going to get exactly that, what was bargained for. But if you want people to go above and beyond, if you want them to be inspired, people use that word. But if you really look at the origins, in spiritus, it means the spirit has gotten into you to go above and beyond, that a certain skill set that is different, that gets to those gifts, is needed. You can ask yourself, am I a leader or am I a manager? And the nice follow-up question could be, did people have a choice in picking me or not? If you were assigned by someone and nobody had a choice to pick you or not, they have to report to you because you have power to hurt them? I'm not so sure. You could be a leader, but just doesn't mean that you are, right? But if people, on the other hand, are sort of flocking to you because they want to, and they have a choice to do that, and they're enjoying it for the things that you're doing, and we'll cover that certainly when we go further into the topic of leadership, then you might say that, according to many, you might satisfy the prerequisite, which is you have voluntary followers. So that's one interesting way to look at it. In terms of specific topics, there are quite a few under the general umbrella of leadership, and some of those could be leadership fit, some of those could be leader-member exchange, the quality of personal relationships, and some of them could also be, that I like quite a bit, this idea of transformational leadership, which has received quite a bit of empirical support as of late.